wanted to share with you guys today my my angle grinder stand and a few quick angle grinder tips. So it's very simple. Basically, you can see the angle grinder is just mounted on a few blocks of scrap wood that I have. And originally, this stand, you can see it's kind of it's a spring-loaded dealio here. This was just a $10, I guess, kind of what you might consider back in the States a Harbor Freight special. It's just connected. The base plate was metal, but I found that it was very difficult to use that and the vice system that they had on that product. So I threw away that bottom metal plate. You know, it had this kind of an angle finder and then another screw with this being half of the vice. It's just very flimsy. It just didn't work very well, and the whole thing vibrated terribly. So basically, like I said, what I did was I just bought a cheap machinist vise here, a drill press vise, and then I've mounted this. I can just take this and put it at whatever angle I want in relation to the cutting edge here. And what I did was I cut, because I like to make this 45-degree cut, and I have to be really close up because my piece can't protrude that much here. So I cut this off right here, you can see. So that kind of, lines up really well right there. And before that bottoms out, assuming that the wheels hasn't become too small, that will cut off the piece that's in there. So I don't do a lot of cutting and grinding. I didn't get involved in blacksmithing to listen to this noise, so it's not very pleasurable to me, but it's sometimes a necessary thing. So, and then what I'll do is I'll show you now, I'll cut a piece of, I normally would cut this stock here. This is 1050 medium carbon. And, I'll make an angled cut right at that mark there. So I'll make, maybe halfway through, I'll cut a 45 and show you how I can do that with this really cheap angle grinder. Another quick thing is the angle grinder mounts in this angle grinder stand just from the front and the back by a screw on each side. And the screws screw into what would normally be the holes for the handle, either this side or that side on the angle grinder if you were to use a plastic handle with this tool. Exactly what you see right here. And then the way you adjust it is there's a screw on the top and one on the bottom here, and then you just, tighten those or loosen those to adjust the angle of your cutting wheel. I just want to quickly mention that if you have a cheap angle grinder like this, and you see that it has these two ports on the sides with plastic screws, if your angle grinder kicks out, a lot of times I see people just throw these away and say, oh, well, it burned the motor out. But if you are running it hard and suddenly it doesn't work, and it just seems for no good reason, it might be that inside of here there are carbon brushes. And they push up against the armature that spins in here, and if that's not aligned right, or if they get worn down, it just won't work at all. It'll seem like the motor's bust. So I went, a few times. I mean, I'm not that mechanically inclined. I don't claim to be, but I'm pretty good at fixing things. So when this thing crapped out and I was going to go buy a new one, I said, let me just take it apart and see what's going on. And it just turned out to be very simple, just those carbon brushes. So here I can see I bought a box. It cost me $1.380. It cost me about $1.70, $1.75 for a box of these carbon brushes. And then I'll just, if I can make my hand work properly, you see, it's just simple as that. It's just this a piece of carbon, and it's spring-loaded, and then you just undo that, take the old one out, and then properly push this one in. And it has a way that it has to be orientated, but it's pretty obvious to see because you can see a little bit of a bevel, well, not really a bevel, but a kind of a depression in this thing and how it fits as that thing rotates. So, and if it's really far gone, if this is broken off, you might have to unscrew it from here and take this housing off and then drop that piece out, put it back, and then put these new ones on. So just a very simple tip that can help you and save you from spending money that maybe you don't need to spend. Another thing though is like maybe a higher priced angle grinder like this Makita. You can see it doesn't have, the brushes are not accessible on the outside like that. So, and I'm not exactly sure, it's probably different style brushes as well. And obviously, to be honest with you, I think this style, a little higher priced model, you know, you don't seem to have that problem as much. So, but if you have a cheap one like this, like I have mounted here, you know, it doesn't work, give the brushes a go. One final thing before I cut this piece right here is these little 4-inch or 4.5-inch angle grinders don't have a lot of power at all. You know, it's really not that suitable for cutting something as thick as this piece. You know, this is 38 millimeter wide by 16 millimeter thick, and like I said, it's medium carbon, not easy to cut. And I had almost no success cutting this material until I found the proper cutoff wheel. So I was just in my local hardware store, and I'll show you here. Move these brushes aside. You know, these are just some other wheels, and these are not actually cheap. This one I think says made in Germany, but you know, this is Taiwan, so who knows? You know, this if I use this style wheel on that, you know, just about useless. And this one too. This is a cheaper Taiwan brand. Just wouldn't work. I mean, these do work for certain, you know, for ferrous and non-ferrous metals, but you got to really find the right brand. I don't know why. I should invest money in this company if they have stock, because you know, I don't think it's going to focus in, and it doesn't even say the name on it. It just says, right there, it just says cut wheel. I know that's not focused in. But these green ones, boy, they just cut so easily. I'm just so surprised. And for one of these, I pay, I don't know, maybe it's like $1 or so for one of these wheels, and it lasts a pretty long time. So, you know, I'm not sure what the difference is with these and why they work so well, but man, I can cut through this medium carbon steel really easily with such a cheap tool like this. So let me get to cutting that piece and I'll show you. Just for good measure, I'll put on a new wheel. So here she goes. Oh, it's loud enough. I didn't have this secured the way I usually do, but yeah, you can see a nice cut that made. And that's the angle that I just want on that piece, so perfect. So that's just a quick look at my angle grinder stand here. I've got it, you know, just set on the floor here, but I can also just mount it on top of a tabletop if I like. But I usually prefer to keep it down low. Always remember, always when you use something like this, to wear eye protection. You know, I'm sure I'll be lambasted somehow, some way for some safety issue in this video, but, you know, well, it is what it is. And one last thing is that in a future video, I'll show you how I can use this setup and with a flap disc like this to sharpen drill bits. And I'm sure that'll be met with a lot of criticism as well, but that's okay. So if it works, it works. So, yeah, until next time, thanks a lot. I'll talk to you guys then.